Hello, my name is Trevor Smith, and this is my proficiency scale development and analysis project for my William Woods class, EDU 730, Effective Educational Systems. So first, I wanted to talk about systems in place in Columbia Public Schools for the development of proficiency scales. So first we have a system in place to determine priority standards. When we are doing that, central office administrators are collaborating with building level administrators, but also, and more importantly, curriculum coordinators that we are fortunate enough to have in this district. Building level or district level administrators and curriculum coordinators determine which standards need priority based on our assessment data and data that we've collected from standardized tests such as the MAP and the EOC, as to which questions, which standards are hit the most on those tests. Teachers do have a role in this process. After priority standards are determined, teachers are invited in to join the conversation and give input as to how they're going to use the proficiency scales, what deems a one, two, three, or four in student work, and things like that. There are also systems in place for the development of proficiency scales for training. There's several pieces to this puzzle and several stakeholders that have to be trained. First, building level administrators must be trained. It's important that they are in the know and in support of this initiative so they can support it when their teachers inevitably run into struggles. So it's important that that building level administrators are trained and understand proficiency skills in and out so they're ready to support their teachers throughout the process. Then teachers must be trained. This is a much bigger task to take on as there are way more teachers than there are administrators. So you have to rely on the administrators and their training some to help you train and bring up the teachers as a district level administrator. But teachers are the most important piece. They have to understand, buy in, and be on board with any new initiative, especially a proficiency scale system that's going to impact their grading practices in a big way. So teachers need to be trained and be in the know. And then lastly, parents and students need to be trained. Parents training is a lot less involved. It might be, community meetings, emails, public service announcements might work with your local news broadcast to ensure that the message gets out there. Oops. Ensure that the message gets out there to parents. With students, their training is going to be a little different. They're going to get in there and work with the proficiency scales in their classroom early on in the school year and help them get an understanding of how things are going to work for them moving forward. But as much as you can front load that with communication that goes out to their parents, that's certainly helpful. And then lastly, there needs to be a professional development plan in place as you develop proficiency skills for the future. You want to be able to sustain this project long term, and that's not going to happen without some sort of professional development plan to keep it fresh in everyone's mind. And as you get new teachers, help get them trained up. How this aligns with with level four of high reliability organizations, high reliability schools, is it checks both boxes. There are clear measurable goals when using proficiency scales. That's kind of the whole point. They lay out what standards a student needs to master and what standards they're still working on. And there is progress monitoring that happens. This can look a lot of different ways. Here in Columbia Public Schools, there are progress monitoring is done by using data walls. I've seen it done that way at elementary schools where students' data is up on a board and it's very accessible to everyone in the building and is a very transparent way to show student data. Also, progress monitoring is done through PLCs. That's done at the elementary and high school, secondary levels. And I've seen this uh, work so well in teachers collaborating to see what they can do to ensure students who are struggling get brought up to speed and putting their heads together and putting their expertise together to become a more powerful unit to make sure our students are achieving as high as they can. So PLCs are a great way to regularly progress monitor using the proficiency skills that are implemented. Excuse me, opportunities for growth of implementation. I would say increase communication with students and families throughout the process. I feel like as we implemented proficiency scales in Columbia Public Schools, there was a lot of communication on the front end that was necessary, and it was great to ease anybody's uh, frustration or anxiety around the change because change is anxiety inducing for a lot of people. So increased communication with them. I was more referring to throughout the process and late in the process as the implementation continues, how things are going. I'd like to see more communication with with students and families on how things are going and how we're going to continue this work, how we're going to improve this work so their students' experience in school can continue to improve. And I'd like to see us utilize our technology resources more effectively. We are very fortunate to have a one-to-one ratio. Students have devices, staff has devices. I think the ultimate time saver that we could create by blending a system that used our proficiency scales with a grade book that we use and assessments. All that work is in the very initial phases in this district, but seeing that work be done will be a huge time saver for teachers. And also, the more you utilize technology resources, the more opportunities for differentiated instruction our teachers will have to, offer kids multiple ways to learn that isn't just pencil and paper from a textbook, but getting more technology integrated, not only in the proficiency scale use, but in the educational experience altogether, would streamline the process and increase student engagement and experiences. Leadership skills needed to implement, use, and monitor the use of proficiency scales. First, you have to have visionary leadership. You have to have a clear view from the very beginning of all of these minor details as much as you can that it takes to execute this plan. So whenever you have that vision and it's clear and you're confident in that vision, there is staff buy-in, and that is very important for I mean, that's critical. If staff, if administrators, if the community hasn't bought into your initiative, then it's going to fall flat because it's going to be met with resistance and the going will get tough at some point. And so you have to have resilience there. There has to be an understanding that this is a long-term thing. Second thing is instructional leadership needs to be solid for proficiency skills to be rolled out. Um, People who are well versed in standards, such as content coordinators, are essential for the implementation of this practice. They give a lot of valuable input, especially early on in the process when selecting like what standards to prioritize and how mastery could be measured. Next is collaborative leadership. I think this is probably the most important piece of the implementation of these um, of proficiency scales. Central office and building level administrators must collaborate on the front end to ensure that everybody's bought in. They have to collaborate with teachers to make sure they're prioritizing the right standards and making sure the way that they are wanting to roll out and use the proficiency scales will be useful and beneficial for teachers and make their jobs better. and they must collaborate with students and parents and community members to keep everyone in the know and maintain a level of support and partnership that's necessary for schools to have with outside stakeholders. And then lastly, it's important to have accountability leadership. I've talked about sustainability of this several times in this throughout this presentation. And that goes back to the visionary leadership piece. It goes back to the collaboration leadership piece, but then having systems ready to hold teachers accountable to using the proficiency scales is critical. And then as a district level administrator, you must have accountability systems in place to hold building level administrators accountable as well. If a building level administrator is saying all the right things in meetings, but going back to their staff and not prioritizing this initiative, then their staff certainly won't prioritize it, and you'll have at least one school not doing what they're supposed to be doing and not providing the best experience for their students. So, to put it simply, proficiency scales are worth it. They show a, step four of a high reliability school. They provide many opportunities for students to um, demonstrate mastery. They give students direct feedback as to which specific skills they're lacking and need to work on, and they help empower students to give them more ownership over their learning, which is an incredible thing that we aim to do is put that intrinsic motivation into kids to continue to be lifelong learners. These are my references, and I greatly appreciate you watching this video. Thank you so much for your time.